Hi, my name is Dr. Moore, and I'm going to talk to you about the second part of perfecting the art of asking questions. Now, I'm actually a student of asking questions. I like to understand and think about how people form their sentences and how they group together their words, but also when there's gaps in that in a way where I'm like, this really doesn't make sense. And the type of questions that people ask, they can actually confuse you because by asking the wrong question, you never get the kind of information you're looking for. So being able to really solicit the question in a way that you can get what you need, and you also can follow up in a way where they really didn't answer that question, will just allow you as a student of science to take your ability to learn to the next level. So there's two different types of ways that people ask questions. There's open-ended questions, and those usually typically start with what, why, or when. And so there's subjective ones where you're actually soliciting someone's opinion. There's objective ones where you're trying to get specific information, but there's also ones that are problem-solving questions. So you're asking a question where you're saying, why do you believe this theory is this way? And you want them to expound upon that. Now, there's closed-ended questions, and those are ones that you're trying to get someone to give you a yes or no type of answer. Or is it this or is it that? Or you just maybe want someone to give you very specific information in an order. Can you do this, or can you describe every ingredient in this particular solution? So those questions, you're eliciting a very specific answer. Now, at the end of the day, as a student of science, you want to be able to not only put information into your mind in a way, but you can organize it and also see where the gaps exist and ask questions to fill those gaps. But you also want to be able to cut through all of the different, sometimes cloudy or smoke that sometimes folks put out and say, no, this is specifically what I want. And I have a question that's going to pin you down and maybe challenge you to give me the answer that I'm actually looking for. Because at the end of the day, I want you to win. Thank you. Let's go. The lesson that we're going to be talking about today is perfecting the art of asking questions, and it's actually part 2. So this is the second part. And for individuals that didn't get a chance to go to the first lesson, I'm going to do a quick overview just so you have some context for why I believe it's very powerful to know how to ask good questions. And the hypothesis is that it's easier to understand and identify gaps in your knowledge if you can ask good questions. Let me take a step back and say that as a student of science, we all have gaps in our knowledge. We're learning things new, you're trying to put it into something that's comprehensive, you're trying to tie things together in a way that's meaningful. But the goal is to be able to identify where your gaps exist. But if you have a framework to put information into context, then you can ask really good questions. 3 of the things that we talked about in those lessons were, 1, being able to tell a story. So if you have a clear beginning and end, then you can say, okay, well, I know how to get from here to here, and maybe I know how to move back some, but I have these gaps here that I have to be able to fill with information so I have a complete story. And this is really good for things that are like processes. So, like classes like biology, where I have a biochemical process, or things that have steps to it. And you could ask yourself, okay, well, if I feel like I understand the big picture and how all these things are connected, can I start from the ending and go back to the beginning, and does it make sense? Right? But these are one of the things that I do automatically when someone's telling me a story or telling me a situation that they've gone through. I start to poke holes because I see gaps. I'm like, no, you jump from here to here, right? Tell me what happened in the middle. They're like, oh, okay. And in my mind, I'm putting that into a story, and it's a visual story for me, and I'm adding all the information that I'm giving in context. And then once I lock that in, I'm locking it in for years. And my friends hate me because they'll be like, oh yeah, remember da-da-da-da-da, I did. I'm like, no, you didn't say that, you said this. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, quit lying. You said this, and specifically you said this because in my mind, I created that story, and I had all those pieces together, and it made sense to me, and I could bring the details back, if that makes any sense. The other thing that we talked about in that lesson, perfecting the art of asking questions, is creating a building of information, a foundation. So classes like physics, where if E equals mc squared, if I know that, then I know that, okay, this is force equals mass times acceleration. Like I can go through and I can start to create information on top of one another to get to an end product. But each one of these buildings these blocks I'm putting together is a concept that I'm trying to learn, and I'm trying to link them together and have them make sense. And if any of these parts is wrong, then how do you identify that and replace it with accurate information, right? But it's another way for you to learn how to have trust in yourself and say, if I know this, and I know this, then it has to be this, right? You're using deductive and inductive reasoning to be able to get to a solution, right? And as you guys start to have to solve more complicated math problems and science problems, you're going to have a framework in your mind to retain that information in the details and identify when you have wrong thinking or errors in your thinking, right? But again, this is a framework, and if any part of this is incorrect, then you could be like, I have a question about this part. I have a question about this part, right? And then you can get that answered. And then the last part that we talked about with that lesson, the first part of this lesson, is looking at the big picture. And we had a diagram, and through this diagram, there were multiple pieces that were connected, and I had you guys go about and describe to me in words this image starting from the outside moving in, right? How could you describe that to someone who's blind? And you start to learn, especially when you get into groups, people describe things differently, and you may realize that because this person to your right or left thinks differently than you like the way to describe it a lot different than the other person, and you can begin to then because you understand this is the big picture, how are the other pieces interconnected to one another, right? The specifics of it. And I talked about that in regards to like certain math and science courses. So for example, say that you're taking a math course and you have an instructor that goes in and just starts talking about a function. Well, in my mind, I'm like, so what can I use this function for? Right? Like, let me take a step back. Why is this important to me? Right? And now since I have at least that framework, then I can then start looking at the details of this function and be like, oh, wow, okay, that makes sense to me because I at least have the big picture of like why. But if I don't, then I'm automatically moving into memorization mode. And I'm just trying to remember what the specifics of this that I have no context for, right? So again, all of this is the beginning framework where we're teaching ourselves how to ask good questions, and we're trying to develop a framework in our mind to store information that we're learning for long periods of time. And today we're going to focus specifically on how to ask closed and open-ended questions in a very targeted and specific way to elicit the response that we want. Does that make sense? All right. Anybody have any thoughts or comments before we move on? All right, let's go. So this is lesson in the workbook. We're on page 58. If you guys are online following, I believe it's lesson 1.7.2 in the intellectual self-awareness section. And I'm going to try to be very, very interactive with the virtual community, since we have more people virtual than we have in person right now. So maybe Vicky, could you read that quote for us at the very beginning of this lesson?
If they get you asking the wrong questions, they don't have to worry about answers.
All right, so what do you think Thomas is saying with that, Vicky?
Mm, like if you're not asking for the information that you want, they don't really have to worry about formulating like the answer correctly. I'm gonna read it one more time in my head.
Okay.
Honestly, I'm not sure.
Okay, anybody want to help out your fellow peer? You have any thoughts about what this is saying?
So it kind of reminds me of like, you know how people say, "Oh, you didn't ask that," right? Like the "don't ask, don't tell." It's like, "Oh, you didn't ask that." So if you didn't ask it, I'm not withholding the information. You just never looked for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like what that quote is giving me. It's like, well, you didn't really ask it, so how could I give you the correct answer if you don't really know what you're asking for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're going to see this a lot in life, and I'm just bringing this up where you can just kind of observe and just see how things kind of play out in life in certain situations. But you can have a group of people. Say you're working for this company, and everybody is part of the executive suite, and you're trying to strategize around getting to or meeting a certain goal or objective. But it's the question. Like, if the question is directly going right at that goal or objective, then the answers will then fill in and get you to that objective. But a lot of times, people ask questions that are tangential or parallel. No, I mean, and it's a high sign of intelligence to ask good questions. You have to think, right? You have to be able to ascertain what is a good question. So if I'm trying to hide something from you, and I have you over here answering or asking me questions that are tangential to what was really happening, this is what's really going on, but I don't want you to know what's really going on. I want you guys over here on these wedge issues. I want you over here reacting about and being divisive about this, when really this is my game plan and goal, and you just don't know it because you're not asking the right questions. Does that make sense? Talk to me out there in virtual land. Because I see Win, you kind of frowning, Win. Does it make sense to you, Win? Talk to me.
Um, I don't know how to explain the confusion, but sorry, I don't know how to explain that, mm, but I think I can understand.
Put a pin in it. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I actually just want to add in a little bit, right? Like, this is a common, I think, at least for me, I would say, this is like a common feeling all the time, especially when I go to like math classes, for example. How many times have we all went to like a math professor's office hours, right, to ask a question about this problem, and he's like, I don't understand what you're trying to get at, right? That kind of gets me to understand, wait, maybe I don't understand the topic enough because I can't even formulate an actual question to even answer in the first place. And that's, I think that also kind of rings to me a little bit more when it comes to that statement, right? Like, I don't know what to ask, so therefore I must not be understanding this topic as much as I thought I do. And so I need to go back to the drawing board and really understand something so I can actually formulate an actual question that makes coherent sense.
So I'll add to that. Thank you for that, Joe. So it's putting into words and asking a question of something you clearly do not know is a sign of clarity. you are clear on what you don't know. And you're asking a specific question to get that answer. Not like, I think, like, it's like when someone who's teaching you something can teach in a very clear way with steps, you understand they have clarity to their understanding of it. Right? Versus like hocus pocus, yeah, just trust me, believe me on that, right? Just memorize this formula and then we good. Versus like, let me actually break down to you how this formula was derived, how it was developed, and how you can use it. There's a certain clarity to it. So it's just put a pin in that and think about that as we kind of go through this exercise. But you want to be a student of asking questions and asking really good questions. All right, so we know about open-ended questions, we know about closed-ended questions. Open-ended questions are kind of designed for what? What do you think open-ended questions are designed for? What are you thinking, Eduardo?
You start with question with asking, there's a specific areas of the 5W1H question. They're asking, what, how, who, when, why, like specific information on, related to certain context or information.
Okay. All right. So in general, open-ended questions are designed to get you to talk, right? You know how sometimes you ask somebody a question, they give you a one-word response? This open-ended question is designed to get you to share more than a one-word response, and to share what your ideas are, to share what your opinion is, right? So what, how, who, when did this happen? Why did this happen? Right? But like it's designed to get you to talk more than yes or no, or giving me a specific and boxing you in to a very specific response. So there's subjective, and a couple of these we have on here is what do you think about the flavor of this pie? Right? Give me your ideas and thoughts about this. When there is a disruption in this process, like in biology, if there's a disruption in this step, just like chemistry, what do you believe happens? Right? What do you believe happens? And you can't be like, you either like, I don't know, or you gotta talk, right? You gotta give me your opinion, right? Or how is this concept that we learn relevant to the big picture of conserving energy? And that professor that you may ask that to has to then dig a little deeper. How is it relevant? Give me context. Right? I want more layers than what you've given me before. And this question, I'm asking you specifically to ask you to give me more layers. Give me more context for this information that you're sharing with me. Does that make sense? All right. So objective questions is when you're trying to get specific information from somebody. Again, subjective, what is your opinion? What are your ideas? How do you feel about this? But objective is, I don't want to know that. I want to know specifics. So what evidence do you have that supports this hypothesis? Give me some references. Where did you get that from? Where did you learn that from? Like where's that? This hypothesis that you have, or this idea that you have, this theory you have, oh, you got that from the internet, from somebody who's not an expert in that field with no references, but then you just believed it, right? Oh, no, okay. Oh, you got this from this professor. Okay. All right. So then where did they get that information from? I'm asking this question in a very objective way, and I'm still being open-ended about it, but I still want to know the specific details, right? What ingredients are required for this reaction to work properly? So if I'm asking you that, Annalee, then you got to be like, okay, I need calcium. Okay, I need some sodium. Then I need this particular protein. Like you gotta, and when I ask you that question, you can't BS me with, acting like you know some stuff that you don't know, because I'm asking you specifically, what do you need? Does that make sense? Again, this right here, if I'm trying to ascertain from you what you really know, then I'm going to ask you an open-ended question, but in a way that's objective, because I want to know what you know. I want you to share that with me. And you either have to answer that question or tap out and be like, I don't know. Oh, okay, you don't know. Okay, that's what's up. And then with problem solving as well, too. And in regards to this, it's very similar to going to a tutor or going to a professor and you not maybe understanding a concept and trying to ask a question to help you elicit better understanding that concept. What should I do next based on my approach to this problem? Or can you identify, my errors in thinking that would allow me to further understand the concept that I don't know to move forward, right? All right, so any questions about what we've talked about thus far? In virtual land and in front. All right, so question 1. You are enrolled in a calculus class. Some people in here are really excited about that. And the professor has just finished explaining the concepts of limits. Right? People who've taken calculus before, Calc 2, y'all know about limits. Actually, Calc 1. What subjective question can you ask to better understand the concept? So, if you've taken calculus before, I want you to think about that. Spend about a minute just thinking about it. And if you haven't taken calculus, that's not, you're not hindered, because you can still ask questions so you can better understand what limits are, right? But what kind of question would you ask that professor to be able to put limits into to understand that concept? All right, it's been a minute. It's a time stamped kind of question. All right, so what are folks thinking? What kind of question are you going to ask the professor to get a deeper understanding of the concept of limits? And let me see, Sam, what are you thinking, Sam?
About the concept of limits. When I was first taking the calculus 1, and I have no idea what about the limit is. And the professor gave me an example. It's about the fraction. In a fraction, the denominator cannot be the 0, because when you approach to a very tiny number, approach the 0, like the 0.00001, the whole number will become very large, and it will become the infinity. And that's how I understand mathematically why the denominator cannot be the 0 the first time. And in the real world, another example is...
But hold on, Sam. Now, I'm not asking you what your idea or understanding of limits are, and I'm glad that you explained that, because for folks who don't know that, you could be the professor and you gave me an example. But I want to know, what question would you ask the professor if you didn't know what limits are? Because most of the time, as you guys are in school at this point, you're going to be asking more questions than maybe answering them, although you will be answering them potentially from your peers and people who are you're studying with and people you guys may be tutoring because you guys are cool like that. and or asking the. But I want you guys to think about you're trying to elicit what you need.
Yeah, got you. So whenever I learn a new concept, I will first ask about the definition, because I think the definition is pretty important to learn the concept. Because different people may have different definition for the same word at the limit. If we haven't learned the limits in the math, we might have different definition for the limits. So we need to define the definition first for a concept, for a term.
Okay, I like that. What is the definition of this? I'll use word. There could be it could be and or concept too. A concept can have potentially a definition to it as well. Okay, I like that. What else?
After that.
No, not you, Sam. No, you good, Sam. But I'm gonna share with because you got some colleagues over there that want to go in. Tom got his he's on mic, like he's ready to start speaking right away.
Oh, definitely. Because limit is like it's like a point approaching a certain it's like asymptote. That means you can never get there. It means you keep pushing, keep approaching that point, but you can never really get there. But there might be some situation like a function. There's a certain center point in the middle. How does the function like define which point to stop? Because there's going to be a limit. A limit seems to be a defining concept that stops the point from approaching that asymptote. But what happens if that's a interruption in the middle, and how the points know when to stop? That might be the question.
Is that your question? Is that your question, Tom? Because okay, so you can see that when Tom was answering this, he was phrasing his question first, right? He was talking about what he knew or believes he knows about a limit, and then you were kind of asking a specific question about what happens next. All right, okay, I like that. Anybody else want to add anything?
I think Eduardo does.
Okay, go ahead, Eduardo.
I haven't taken calculus yet. I'm going to, but when we're talking about limits, the first thing that comes to my mind is restrictions. Then for me, in order to know if there is any restriction, I first need to know the main ideas about the topic that we're talking, because the main thing will be just to maybe defined, absolutely defined the topic we're talking about, and maybe like it's completely different, but this is an example. Like when you're doing and you're writing an essay, we already have the main idea. Then we start developing the topic, and I will say defining the what is a limit, and support ideas regarding our definition, to then try to make sense of what not to do after we know what we can do.
Okay, I like that. All right, so you have what are the main ideas about topic, areas of restriction or boundaries of limits. So you're trying to figure out like where are the rules at that can potentially expand the idea of limits or not, and what not to do. So I like that a lot because from a concept standpoint, sometimes it's easier to know that these are the rules that I can't go with this concept, and and then maybe that gives you a little bit more background or concept or context to be like, okay, this is the area that I can go. Go ahead.
I just want to piggyback real quick off of Eduardo because he actually made an interesting point about limits. Is that sometimes I like in math and science classes when I hear a word that I use like in like regular English, I want to know there's a that there's a connection between the two things. Sometimes you feel like words can have like super different meanings, but sometimes the colloquialism is literally like a metaphor to what the math or science concept is. And Eduardo really highlight that point when we said limits. The first thing I think about is restrictions. Oh, well, actually, that's actually kind of the concept of a limit, actually. It's the idea of like, okay, once you get to a certain like restriction, what's the function actually doing around that restriction? So again, very, very cool concept. And then I was like, oh yeah, that's what I kind of want to add in there. So that's what I like to do actually when I have math science class. Like, can I relate these common words with these scientific words?
Okay. So, is there a different meaning of the word in a different context? And maybe being able to understand what that is and what the difference could be, or where there may be overlap. Okay. All right. So, question number 2. You are enrolled in a biology course where you are learning about that bacteria produces antibiotics used to treat specific infections. What objective question, keyword objective, not subjective, would you ask the instructor to better understand the role of an antibiotic? And because we're getting better at asking questions in real-time speed, anybody who got an idea can just pop it out real quick.
What's a subjective question to stuff like that, though? I'm just kind of curious.
Subjective is open-ended. What is your opinion? What?
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
And I don't want your opinion. I want you to give me very specifics on the role of antibiotics.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And we could go big picture. We don't have to think that hard about it right now.
What is the difference in structure of the antibiotic versus the bacteria that it was produced from?
Okay. What is structure of antibiotic? Okay, in bacteria. Now, okay, this is
versus the bacteria that it was produced from.
All right, so think about an antibiotic as just a small molecule.
Okay.
And bacteria, that's what they do. They make small molecules. And you can use that small molecule to treat penicillin. Penicillin used to treat,
Isn't that for fevers, right?
Well, it was initially found to treat people who had certain, fungal infections during like World War I, I think, or World War II. But it's a small molecule that can then go in and kill fungi. But that's the kind of question that you can have a big picture question to ask me, right? Like, what are specifically what are antibiotics used for, and what do they look like, right? Because you can just start there. Like at the end of the day, like if I know nothing about antibiotics, I'm just gonna start big picture. Like what is that, and what do you do with that? Can you put that in context for me? Can you give me an example of how antibiotics were discovered and what they're used for?
I mean, if you want to give an example real quick, cool.
Oh, go ahead.
No, if you want to give an example, I want to know. Okay,
Penicillin.
Wait, no, because your question was there a difference between like the structure of antibiotic and thing, and you're trying to say, like, isn't that always the case? Isn't that how you?
So like the big picture is, say that this is a bacteria. This is bacteria A, this is big bacteria B, right? In general, chemistry and organic chemistry is about making carbon-based molecules, right? They try to make very specific carbon-based molecules. And these carbon-based molecules can be used as drugs to treat people in certain ways. Maybe they need them to, go to sleep when they're in surgery. Maybe they need them to reduce pain. But they're just small molecules, right? And it could just look like, this. That's a small molecule. But bacteria, they make them. And actually, they make really complicated molecules. And they do that way better and easier than we do outside of the body, outside of an organism. We have to do a whole lot to make a complicated molecule. Bacterias, they do that for sport. And what they do is, that as they're making these molecules, is they'll secrete them out to mess with bacteria B. You're in my territory. Back up. Back up off my territory, because I want to spread out. I want a whole bunch of A's over here instead of, B bacteria. And so my point being is that you can use these small molecules, which are antibiotics, to treat whatever that they potentially could work on. Right? Does that make sense? And so, and if you can get a bacteria to make a drug for you, and then you can purify it, you're winning, versus you having someone manufacture that bug and have to do a whole lot to get less of it, because we have to do 10 steps of synthesizing this drug, when bacteria does what it does, and then it can just make it as much as it wants and indefinitely, right? Does that make sense? But again, the point is, how do you ask a question so you can elicit the response you need to get you to where, okay, now I understand what this is. My next question is, because I still see a gap here, is this. Does that make sense? And I want you guys to begin to think about that, because what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to bridge what we talked about earlier at the very beginning of this workshop. How do you actually put information into context when you're learning it for the first time? Right? How do you understand what the big picture is and ask questions that give you the big picture when you're learning something for the first time? And then how do you specifically ask questions about the steps or processes that don't make sense to you? Right? So you either can put it in a story-like fashion, or you can build a building, or whatever it is. How do you ask those questions specifically to give you what you feel like you need? And then you're like, okay, I understand everything you're saying, now let's go. Versus like, what's going on? And, I want to, but we don't want none of that. We want you guys to be bold. We want you guys to be courageous. We want you guys to ask good questions. And really, no question is dumb when you're learning something for the first time. But typically, when I'm learning something for the first time, I'm always going to go with, why is this relevant? Can you give me context of why I should be messing with you? Right? Like, give me that. Let's start there. And once I got that, then I'm like, okay, now you can start filling it in with the details. But if you don't give me that first, then I'm confused, and I'm spending most of my time thinking like, I don't want to pay attention to you right now, because I'm just memorizing what you have to say and I have no context for it. Y'all with me? All right. So, you go to a tutor for problem 3 for help with the chemistry problem. What kind of question can you ask the tutor that will assist you with identifying your area of misunderstanding? No, I don't want you to give me the answers, tutor. I want you to help me better understand the areas that I don't understand. So then I can use my own mind to think forward and get to a solution with that specific information that I'm trying to elicit from you. What kind of questions would you ask? And I kind of teed it up for y'all, so.
I would kind of ask them to listen to like how I would just, like if we were talking about concepts, it's like, okay, can you, I'm going to explain the concept to my understanding. After I explain it, can you take some time and help me figure out if there's a gap or if I'm misunderstanding something?
I like that.
Yeah.
So that's a proactive way of learning. Let me check with you for understanding of what I believe I know.
Yeah.
Right? And then I want you then to identify, is there anything that's kind of a little off on what I think I know? And let's start there with you then helping me better understand or correct my error or slight differences in maybe what I believe the meaning is. Okay, all right. What else? Because we got some brilliant people around here, and I want to see everybody shine appropriately, especially the people in virtual land. What are you guys thinking?
For me, I will ask the tutor to give me some examples to explain the concept, especially for the specific problem. That might help me understand the concept more well. And after that, I will iterate my understanding to the tutor to make sure I'm on the right track. I'm correct.
Now, Sam, are you specifically saying I know the concept that I don't know, and I just want the tutor to explain it? Okay, so then that's also another approach, because maybe Sam has worked on this problem for 30 minutes and he knows that this is the part I don't know. I know specifically that when I get to step 4, specifically when I get to step 4 of the 7-step problem, I can't get past 4, and there's something that I don't know or don't understand. Can you assist me with better understanding that concept? Is that what you're saying, Sam?
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to add anything? All right. It's as much as you can, right? When you're learning things, you want to be proactive. You don't want to be passive with your learning. You want to be proactive, and you want to be active thinker about your learning, right? So when you're passive, it's easier to move into, I'm just memorizing what you said, right? And you still have to then actively figure out ways to make the information personal to you if you really want to own it for years to come. But if you can think about and be active as you're learning, then one, it's showing me that you're thinking about it in real time, right? And you're trying to wrestle with it, and then, figure out, is there alignment and harmony with what you believe you know, and do you have enough to move forward? If that makes sense. All right. Any questions about what we covered thus far? All right, so now we're in closing the questions. So closing the questions typically start with R. Can you give me the answer that I need? Yes or no? Did you do this at this particular time? Yes or no? Right? Do you know the answer to the question I'm about to ask you? So you can see that, and you see this a lot with lawyers, right? Especially when they have somebody on the stand. They're going to specifically ask close-ended questions. No, I don't want to hear all that. Were you at this spot at 8 p.m.? Well, what happened was, no. Were you at the sign of the murder at 8 p.m., period, full stop, yes or no? No, I wasn't there. Quit lying, right? Now I got you in a lie. And you stuck, right? But you may need to use that again as a tool, depending on what situation you're in, to get the response that you need to move forward. And you just need to know that that is a tool, right? We want to try to equip ourselves with, okay, I'm asking this question specifically because I want your opinion. I want you to open up. I'm asking this specific question because I want to know objectively what are the facts that you know about this. But I'm going closed-ended right now. Like, no. I'm boxing you in. I need to know, and maybe you do this with, if you have kids someday. Did you do this? Yes or no? Or, if it's your just trying to get to the bottom of something, and you feel like that person maybe is not being as truthful as they could be. All right. So we have identification, we have selection, either or. We have yes or no, and these types of questions are just good for you to just, again, be very conscious of in this moment. I'm proactively figuring out what I need, and I'm asking a question to elicit what I need. So be on the lookout for questions. The ones you ask when someone asks me a question, it could be sometimes a direct question where it's not a question that's disguised, right? It's not a question where this question is a setup for another question, and and this question is to it's not a I got you kind of question. Right? A direct question is, this is how I really, this is what I really want to know. But an indirect question could be, okay, well, this person is asking me this question, but I don't understand why this person is asking me this. What is their perspective? No, you want to know the perspective, if you can, of the person who's asking you that question. Because then you, at that point, can try to figure out what is the intent of this person. Is it negative? Is it positive? Is it neutral? So not only do I want to understand the perspective, but I also at the same time want to understand the angle that they may have behind that too. So these are things that I want you guys to be able to think about as well. And these are things that people may be doing to you when you ask a question that may be, in the words, maybe a stank question, right? Like, no, I mean, you never asked me before? But, so, is their question rhetorical for people who do rhetoric? This is a question that's not meant for you to answer. And then you try to answer the question, you're sitting there like, there is no really answer to this question. We just throwing it out there for sport because we can, right? But these are things I want you guys to think about. So describe how it would be advantageous to understand the perspective of the person asking you a question. Why do you believe that may or may not be advantageous to understand that?
Well, it makes me think of like an interview setting, right? Like, why would they be asking me, what am I bad at? Like, what could possibly be useful as like you knowing what I struggle with, and it's like, I think understanding what they're looking for, it helps you be prepared to answer that question. Especially with interviews, there's a way to be good at interviews and there's a way to be bad at interviews. So yeah. You gotta understand the setting.
That's a really good point. And I'm gonna put that into context too. So, at one point I was applying for, a really competitive fellowship to become a White House fellow. And during that process, I'm being interviewed over the course of a day, four panel interviews. And, I'm trying to read everything that the person is saying, the context or whatnot. So, and you got to imagine, out of these 12 people who are at this interview, they're only sending 3 forward to go to Washington, D.C. to go to the last round. So one of the questions that one of the persons asked me, he's like, so Fred, I see that you won this, really prestigious, Peter House Service Award from UC Berkeley. That's the most prestigious award you can win as an alumni. Tell me about that. And in my mind, I was like, oh, no. I'm already thinking 2-3 steps ahead, right? Because in my mind, I'm like, they're looking for reasons to eliminate folks. And if they think that you don't need this particular fellowship because you've made it already, that's another way to eliminate. I was like, no, we're not going down that route. So I said, well, I feel like Obama when he won the Nobel Peace Prize. I wanted it for my time. There's so much more stuff that I need and want to do, right? So then he was like, okay. So then he was like, well, City College, San Francisco, you know, they're going through accreditation crisis right now. They really can't afford to lose you. And in my mind, I was like, no, you're not getting me on that either, right? Because again, I'm reading the context, right? And I said, this is the process that I went through to even apply for this fellowship. I said, I heard about it from the chancellor of UCSF. She contacted me. And I thought about it and I asked myself, okay, this sounds like a good idea. Let me talk to my boss, the Associate Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs. And I said, I want you to wear 2 hats. The first hat is, with this opportunity, what would you do if it was you? Listen to her response. And I said, wearing the second hat as my boss, what would you do wearing that hat? And she said, what I want you to do is find 3 people who could take your place. If you make it past the second round, we'll narrow it down to 1 person. And if you get the internship, slide in easy. He looked at me, I was like, oh no, we're not playing, right? But again, my point is, you have to understand intent. Because answering that direct question without you being able to then think about what that person's perspective is, you may put yourself in a hole. And being like, I'm in this hole, digging myself out, how did I get here? I'm not supposed to be here, right? So that's something that I really believe is extremely advantageous if you're a student of questions, right? All right, any questions for me? And the last thing I'll say about this, because you got me on a roll, is when you guys are engaging someone during an internship, say you have an internship at Apple, say you have an internship at an academic institution, and someone gave you a journal article to read, and they're like, yeah, read this journal article, come back to me with questions that you may have, and you come back, and I'm like, okay, do you have any questions for me? And you're like, no, I'm good, right? So I will automatically assume now you know everything. No, not asking me that question is going to hurt you because you're saying you're good.
Right.
So if you read this and you know everything, then I'm going to start asking you questions so I can ascertain what you know. Right? In a very objective way. Now we know that word. In a very objective way. Yeah, explain this to me. A figure 1, break that down. You're like, huh, what? But you said you understood everything. So I'm just saying that, like, no, this is real. Learn how to ask questions, and good ones. Don't assume because you keep your mouth shut that they're going to assume that you know something. No, I want to check for validation and proof that you actually, because you're not working on my stuff unless I actually know that you actually know what you're talking about, right? So anyway, we having a good time with it. You guys got any questions over there in virtual land? All right, how we doing on time? All right, so now we can have fun with it. We're gonna do this one little quick exercise, and then we can kind of close out. But go to the role-playing scenarios, and for the people in virtual land, we want to figure out how to get them into 2 different groups potentially, where they can kind of have a place to kind of talk and discuss. But, and maybe we can do 2 groups with 3 people in it and have 1 person stay, then maybe we can talk to the 2 people here. But I'm going to read the scenario real quick. So you are the CEO of a new technology startup that's creating a groundbreaking software program that will reach hundreds of millions of people worldwide. Your chief technology officer, Tony, is a brilliant computer scientist who has the intellectual capital to bring things to the market, but he doesn't have good social skills. Right? He doesn't have the emotional intelligence that other people have, but he still is your chief technology officer, and he knows more about the details of the weeds about the science than anybody else. You realize within a few weeks on the job that a few members of Tony's team have complained about his behavior and mentioned he's impossible to get along with. It could be Tonette, so we don't want to be biased. Tony and Tonette. So, as the CEO of the company, you'd like to salvage the situation to get your first product to market in the shortest amount of time, because at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. People are donating, people are investing a whole lot of money into this company, and if you don't get it to market, Annalise, then you're going to lose your job. The company's going to go down. We just role playing right now. Annalise, no. I know, we're role playing. We role playing right now, right? We role playing. So, how would you handle this situation with the goal of keeping Tony and his team intact to complete the project? You don't want to start over right now. You got like 3 or 4 weeks before y'all need to get to the bottom line and showcase something where you get out in front of folks and present and be like, this is Apple Day, and this is what we doing, right? What type of questions would you ask Tony and his staff to resolve the situation and make sure everyone's needs are met? So you need to write down questions you're going to ask Tony, and you need to write down questions you're going to ask his team members that are complaining about him being impossible to work with. Right? I want you to think about the type of questions you want to ask that's going to elicit what you believe you know, and I'm going to put a 4-question limit on it. That's right. You got 4 questions that you can use to get to and elicit what you believe you need to know and do. All right, anybody got any questions for me? All right, we got 5-7 minutes. Let the games begin. All right, is everybody back? All right, so we're gonna role play this, and this actually may be easy to role play this with people in virtual land, but we're gonna try to cross mediums where we can. But for the person who plays the CEO, who would you want to interview first, right? If you had the choice between interviewing the team member, or would you want to interview Tony first? Eduardo?
I will interview the team members first, because that's where the story starts. They feel uncomfy with his leadership. Then I will start there.
Okay, so thank you for volunteering to be the CEO. I like that response. you will be the CEO. Now, who wants to volunteer to be the team member, and who wants to volunteer to be Tony? And as we're role playing, you could be just as difficult or just as accommodating as you want, knowing the CEO can fire you at some point if you don't listen what the person wants. But who wants to volunteer to be the team member? All right, I'm choosing Vicky. All right. Who wants to volunteer to be Tony? I'm choosing Wynn. All right. So, Eduardo, collect your thoughts real quick. And Vicky, go ahead and unmute, because Eduardo has some questions that he may want to ask you about how to get things started in the game.
Oh, I have like 3 good questions, I think.
You can start whenever you want. You can talk to her like she's one of your employees of your startup company.
Okay, the first question I'll ask is what they don't like about my behavior or the way I direct the team towards the goal. That will be the first question.
No,
The second,
stop. No. You got to ask the question. She has to respond to it. But you have to talk to
okay.
her. Talk to her. Say, so Vicky, this is my question for you as a team member.
Oh, okay, Vicky, this is my first question. What do you think I've done wrong?
No, but you're the CEO, Eduardo.
Tony, yeah.
Oh, I'm the CEO. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you're investigating, right? Because again, at the end of the day, it's
Okay.
going to stop with you. So you're trying to investigate from your team member, and then you're going to talk to Tony afterwards, and that's going to be when.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, Vicky, I want you to give me specific examples of the mistakes that Tony made when he is leading the team towards the goal that you are trying to achieve.
Okay, so like obviously Tony's like a really smart guy and he's like really valuable to our team and we're just the team members and we're trying to like really understand like what about like his work is going to be like valuable to the market and exactly like how it works and how it's marketable. But whenever we ask questions, he acts like we're supposed to know and then he gets like all upset and then he gives us like vague answers that we don't really understand. And so it feels like he's like shutting us out and he's just trying to like work on his own.
Okay, do you propose a solution um, to help him uh, fix this behavior?
Um, Maybe you should make him aware of how like socially unaware he is so that he knows what he has to fix. But also, maybe it's better if we like distance each other because whenever we give feedback in person, he gets all reactive. So maybe it's better to do all of that in an email somehow. But still, like try to make him aware of how he's like socially affecting other team members and how he's being perceived by other people because he's not the most likable person.
Okay, the third question I have for you, how important is this project for you guys? How much are you guys willing to sacrifice? Maybe I mean what I mean is accept, um, you know, to work with his weaknesses in favor of this project.
We're willing to tolerate a lot because we see how valuable this product is, but he needs some improvement. Um, like we're willing to take a lot, but he has to meet us halfway. Like he has to be willing to work with us.
Okay, I understand now what the problem is, and I think I can work something out with it for sure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Win. You got Tony up now, Eduardo.
Okay. What is
Okay,
who's
fine,
Tony?
last.
Okay. What is your name again?
When? You just call me Tony.
Okay. Um. Okay, Tony. Are you do you have any complaint about your team members?
No, I think they're just stupid. I'm sorry.
Okay.
They just can't always keep up our.
Why do you think they look stupid? Can you please provide specific examples?
Specific examples that are.
Why you think they're not I mean why they
Okay, I
don't
can
look
explain
interested?
that. I think is they don't know what they're supposed to know when I'm saying one thing that they need to do. I think they should do it without any questions. They're supposed to do it well, but they always ask stupid questions. Such like that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Do you how important, I want to know, how important is this project for you?
I mean, it is really important for me. I mean, it's what I'm working all the time for.
Okay.
So,
It's very important for you, right?
yeah, of course.
Are you willing to work I mean, are you willing to work with their witnesses and in favor of this project? Like, are you willing to be tolerant with maybe some characteristics that don't fit very well on you, but you, when you make a balance, you say, well, I think I can tolerate this because the goal, the goal is to finish the project successfully, and I can work that out. Or you just think they're very stupid and you just cannot work with them anymore. You
I
know?
think I can work with them just as
You
I
can work
did all the time.
Okay, this is how I see it. You have, I hope you understand this. They need you because you're very smart. That's why you are leading them, you know, because of your knowledge. But you also need them because they might have, you know, some of they have some other skills that you may be lack of, you know. When they ask a question, you might think it's a stupid question, but if you have patience and you answer those questions, you might think you're wasting time, but we are all winning because now they understand because you are the knowledgeable person, and then you provide them with knowledge. Well, they provide everybody with, you know, it's important. I mean, for the success of our project, we need to interact with our customers, who are the people who are willing to buy our product and make our company successful. Then, in order to do that, we have to communicate with the customers, and with not only with the customer, with customers, with others. Then they have the skill to successfully communicate with them. You have the skill to code, to build our software, and make all the codes work. Then we just want both of you to work, I mean, to be a little bit more tolerant and focus on the area that you are strong, you know, and understand that you might be very strong on some areas, but you are weak on others. Well, the important thing is to complement each other, you know. I think if you think they have a stupid question, rather than behave like it is a stupid question, for you it's an easy question because you have the knowledge to easily answer those questions. I will recommend that you focus on that. They get that knowledge, and then they might be able, I mean, it's a good way for you to work on your weakness, because I can see that actually your weakness is not regarding knowledge at all. It's regarding communication. Then if you start playing with what I'm saying, like providing these kind of answers, that's a good way for you to get stronger on your communication. And if you got the knowledge and you got the communication, where you gonna be? You'd be the next CEO. Then for you to be the next CEO, you have to work on your weakness. And what's your weakness? Communication. Then that's a good advice. And I think if you do that, you'll be better. And I know you wanna be better. Are you willing to work with them in a healthier environment since now on?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
You're the boss.
All right, thank you, Eduardo. So, just a couple comments.
Sorry about that.
No. I mean, I think you're a natural leader, right?
Thank you.
So, just feedback. First of all, I think you asked some really good questions of the team member, and I think you asked some really good questions of Tony as well. I liked how you at the end was trying to synthesize more of these could be things for you to think about, Tony, and these could be some next steps for you to kind of grow. The one comment would be when you started talking to Tony first is you could have framed what other people said about him and then asked a question, right? So you had the context. People on your team have been complaining about this, and that. And now my question for you is this, right? So he can kind of maybe ask that in more context. But I think that everything else you said was really good, and I would love to just get your thoughts on either how easy or how hard it was to kind of, ask the kind of questions that you wanted. Oh, and the last thing I probably would say is that I would have saved the fourth question to be for Tony is how committed are you to working on the solution? Like, I want you to commit to that. I want to know if this job means enough to you, with these recommendations for you to commit to working on that. But again, I'm saying this more in hindsight versus, there being artificial limits to being 4 questions moving forward. But go ahead, Eduardo, your thoughts.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. I agree with you. Putting things in context is always the best. It's just talk about reality, because it would have been absolutely a good idea to start presenting him the comments from his team members. That would have been a good idea. And the second thing, you're right. I tried though to make it a little inspirational for for Tony, since he is the team leader, because I'm like, man, you can be with your knowledge and then improving these weaknesses. You just have all the skills to be the next CEO. No, kind of like incentivizing the team leader to be a real leader, and always opening that possibility that kind of like the sky is the limit, that you can continue growing and you could be the next one. But in order to do that, you have to incorporate these other skills that you might be lack of, or that you still have to work on, because that's what a leader is a skilled guy, and it's not only about knowledge, it's about other things. And communication is one of the main skills that a leader needs, for sure.
No, and I like that. And I think that hopefully as your peers were kind of listening to the scenario and wrote down questions that they would ask, you can kind of maybe play off, these are some questions I maybe would have asked in hindsight, or these are questions that I feel like the ones I had were ones that, were good up front. But it's just that how do you be always be an observer that can observe what's happening, learn from it, and continue to refine yourself, right? Continue to think about how could I make this better, right? Like, or maybe the question I could have asked was, you know, Tony, are you open to professional development training? Are you open to learning about how to communicate better? Are you open to enlisting 3 or 4 things? Yes or no, right? And so when you have that locked in, then you're like, okay, moving forward, this is what we're going to do. But either or, again, I want you guys to be students of questions. I want you guys to begin to master the ability to ask good questions, because this is important, not only you know, as a student of science and what you may want to do professionally, but it's also for relationships too. All relationships, personal relationships, right? Being able to being effective and being able to ask the kind of questions that's going to give you the information you believe you need to know, you know, to communicate effectively with the people in front of you. Does anybody have any last thoughts about, you know, this workshop thus far, based on kind of what we covered? All right. So with that, we'll close out the Perfecting the Art of Asking Questions Part 2. Have a great weekend, and I hope to see you guys soon. Take care.